Today we are going to discuss about embedded system development. The development environment consists of is consists of a developer computer PC. It is shown here. This is the development PC. So development PC or host, which act as the heart of a development environment. Then another one is IDE, Integrated Development Environment tool for embedded hardware development and debugging. So another one is IDE, Integrated Development Environment IDE tool, which is mainly used for embedded firmware development and debugging. Last class we were discussed about embedded firmware development, and it's also used for debugging. Then next one is EDA tool or electronic design automation tool. It is mainly used for embedded hardware design. Embedded hardware design. And this is firmware development. Firmware means software development. And EDA, electronic design automation tool used for embedded hardware design. And emulator hardware. There is a emulator hardware for debugging the target board. Emulator is used for debugging the target board. Then there is a signal source or a function generator, which is like a function generator. It is used for simulating the input to the target board. This is the target board. So emulator is used for debugging the target board, and there is a signal source which is like a function generator for simulating the input to the target board. Then there is a target hardware debugging tool. This is hardware debugging tool. Digital CRO is there, and multimeter and logic analyzer, etc. is an example of a hardware debugging tool. And there is a target hardware is there. Then the integrated development environment or IDE and electronic design automation tools are selected based on the target hardware development requirements, and they are supplied as a installable files in CDs by vendors. These tools need to be installed on the host PC used for development activities, and these tools can be either freeware or licensed copy or evaluation version. So a licensed version of the tools are fully featured and fully functional, but trial version falls into two categories, that is tools with limited features and full featured copies with limited period of usage. So ഇതാണ് നമ്മുടെ എംബഡഡ് സിസ്റ്റം ഡെവലപ്മെൻറ്റ് എൻവയോൺമെൻറ്റ്. യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി എക്സാമിന് ചോദിച്ച ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻസ് ആണ്. Explain this environment, embedded system development environment. So main components are development PC or host, and there are two tools are there for development. One is IDE for firmware development, EDA for mainly hardware design, embedded hardware design. Then emulator, there is emulator for debugging the target board, signal source for simulating the input to the target board, Then hardware debugging tool, oscilloscope, logic analyzer, multimeter, etc. Then next one is IDE. In embedded system, IDE stand for Integrated Environment for Developing and Debugging the Target Processor Specific Embedded Firmware. The IDE is also known as Integrated Design Environment or Integrated Debugging Environment. An IDE is a software package which containing text editor, cross compiler, linker, and debugger. Then IDE is a software application that provide facilities to computer programmers for software development. IDE can be either command line based or GUI based. സോ ഐ ഡി എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് നമുക്കിപ്പം വിഷ്വൽ C++ അതുപോലെയുള്ള ആപ്ലിക്കേഷൻ ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമ്മൾ ഡ്രീം വ്യൂവർ എന്നെല്ലാം പറഞ്ഞിട്ട് ചില IDEs യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട്. IDEs യൂസ് ചെയ്താൽ നമുക്ക് ജസ്റ്റ് ഡ്രാഗ് ആൻഡ് ഡ്രോപ്പ് കമാൻഡ് യൂസ് ചെയ്തിട്ട് എന്ത് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും, നമുക്ക് പുതിയ ഈസി ആയിട്ട് സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ പ്രോഗ്രാംസ് ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും. അപ്പം ഇവിടെ IDE എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ പ്രോഗ്രാം ഡെവലപ്പ് ചെയ്യാൻ യൂസ് ചെയ്യുന്ന എൻവയോൺമെൻറ്റാണ്. അതൊരു സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയർ പാക്കേജാണ്. ആ സോഫ്റ്റ്വെയറിൽ ടെക്സ്റ്റ് എഡിറ്റർ ഉണ്ടാവും, കമ്പൈൽ ചെയ്യാൻ പ്രോഗ്രാമിനെ കമ്പൈൽ ചെയ്യാൻ ക്രോസ് കമ്പൈലർ കാണും, ദെൻ ലിങ്കർ കാണും, ഡീബഗ്ഗർ കാണും. Then IDE, what are the main contents of an IDE? One is text editor or source code editor. Another one is a compiler and an interpreter. Then build automation tools, debugger, simulators, emulators, and logic analyzers. Then example of an IDE is Turbo C and C++, which provides platform on Windows for development of application programs with command line interfaces. Then another category of IDE is Visual IDE, which provides the platform for visual development environment. Example is Microsoft Visual C++. IDEs are used in embedded firmware are slightly different from generic IDE used for high-level language-based development for desktop application. In embedded application, the IDE either supplied by the target processor or controller manufacturer or the third-party vendors or as open sources. So here the embedded application general IDE, embedded firmware IDE different from generic IDE. Generic IDE means which is used for developing high-level language programs. So here main difference is the embedded application IDEs are provided by the target processor manufacturer. If for example Arduino, etc. That is the target processor provide the corresponding software IDE. Example that is MPLAB. MPLAB is an IDE tool which is supplied by the Microchip for developing embedded firmware using their PIC family of microcontrollers. So PIC family microcontroller programs are developed by the MPLAB that is given by the Microchip. Then another Keel Mu Vision 3. That is we know Keel Micro Vision 3 from Keel software. From the Keel software is an example of for a third party IDE which is mainly used for developing embedded firmware for which family? A051 family microcontrollers. Then another one is Warriors. Code Warrior by MetroWorks. MetroWorks is an example of IDE for ARM family of processors. ARM family of processors. So, in an embedded firmware development application, each IDE is designed for a specific family of controllers or processors. And it may not be possible to develop firmware for all family of controllers or processors using a single IDE. However, there is a rapid move happening towards an open source IDE, Eclipse, for embedded development. So most of the processor or controller manufacturers and third-party IDE providers are trying to build the IDE around the popular Eclipse open source IDE.